Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
today we're going to talk about something that Calvin would never guess we're going to talk about.
Uh-oh.
We're talking about the Rippaverse.
Yeah, you're right. I would never have thought we are going to do that. Okay.
And why do we bring up the Rippaverse and Gooding the polymath? Because they have one of my favorite guys from the past, Mike Barron, is at the Rippaverse. We're going to watch this. Are you ready?
Hey
Yes,
folks, Mike Barrett
yes, sir.
here. As you know, I've been writing comics a long time. I wrote The Punisher for Marvel, Flash for DC,
Yes.
and I co-created Nexus with my partner Steve Rude and The Badger with Jeff Butler.
Yes.
I'm very excited to announce that I am now part of the Rippaverse. Eric July has asked me to write a book about his character Gooding. This is just about everything we knew about Gooding up to this point. It was up to me to provide Gooding's childhood, his growth, what made him the man he is, and the struggles he has had to face. As always, when I approach a project like this, I begin by making notes in a tablet. When I have enough notes that I call a critical mass, I write an outline. I ran the outline by Eric, he approved, and I went to work. I always say that a writer has to surprise himself before he can surprise his readers, and I succeeded in doing that. I write intuitively so that the story rises organically out of the characters and situations that I'm describing. You can't really think of an ending and then write the whole story to fit that ending. Well, you can, but in the most general sense, such as good triumphs. But my challenge was to make Gooding not only believable, but entertaining. And I think I've done that. I also created a villain, a very memorable villain. I don't want to go into the details now. I think that Eric will let you know about that when the book comes out. But I turned my script in. Eric is very excited about it. I'm very excited about it. And I want to thank him for letting me be part of the Rippaverse. I can't wait until this book appears.
And before we get to what listen, Eric July, Young Ripper says, I just want to say I just think it's cool and smart that you're using your fandom to do comics, but then get a pro to write the stuff, right? Because we see a lot of people now. Most of the people we see on Eric Ethan Van Sciver, a lot of those people are already comic book guys, so we don't need a writer. But a lot of people that are coming into the thing completely cold, get these guys around. These comic book guys, they know story. Use them. These guys know what they're doing. You know, you're getting the artist. You got a plot line. Give it to a writer. Help them flesh it out. And that's what I think. What do you think about that aspect of it?
But doesn't this go in line with the other discussion we had when the guy was like, writing comics is easy?
Well, no, this is the other side of it, of getting, it does go into that only in a sense where Young Ripper got a writer, which is saying, hey, I got this, I got the fan, we got the initial sales. Now let's get somebody real to help this out, which is what I wish the Image guys did. So keep going. Sorry, I just want to add that before I want you to go.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the same point. It's like, hey, writing stuff isn't easy.
Yeah.
Writing isn't easy in itself. So I think that, I mean, I have not paid any attention to the Rippaverse, but if you're gonna get a pro in, okay, so you can actually get some competent writing done and really look to build your universe on a strong foundation. I'm all for that because I mean, that was definitely the death of Image, where these guys could not write to save they could not write to save their lives. Maybe one or two books at the end of the day, and that kept stuff. I mean, between everything being late for whatever reason, but that was something else that like really caused them to hit the shoals and run aground at certain points. And then by the time they did get some some cats in there, it, just wasn't, it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't going to happen anymore. But if they had that competency to start with, we'd probably be talking about, hey, they might have actually been the second coming of Marvel if the writing had been there. And if they had been, well, if guys weren't like, hey, you pay me how much money? All right, thanks. That's 10 years worth of salary. You're not going to see me again anytime soon. Going to Baja.
I'm going to Cabo. Well, that's I mean, for me, because I mean, you've seen some of my collection, and it was the promise of what Image is saying. Hey, these I've seen Byrne and Miller and Perez and these guys develop and become these heavyweights. I was buying them as a little kid, and then they become artists, writers, and then they've been writing since that point and whatnot, and they're collaborating with people. It's just like, well, okay, they don't have enough background as far as the Image guys, but you saw right before the Image guys had that broke out to Image, they had people like Chris Claremont writing tons of, because they were like, it was definitely pretty pictures, but you had someone like Chris Claremont, and 2 seconds after that it was Byrne, and then 2 seconds after that you had Scott Lobdell, and you had Fabian Ascenza that was keeping the stuff around these pretty pictures, like, because wasn't the heavy. Now Stan, I'm all for it too. Stan would overwrite any of the early stuff that he did with Kirby, and it totally worked. So you can have a ton of captions, dialogue, and this, that, and the other. And the only person I've seen who kind of done the middle ground of doing sparse, outside of Frank Miller, obviously Frank Miller is one of the best at doing more sparse dialogue and sparse captions and that sort of thing, and keeping it low and letting the comic book move. The only writer I've kind of seen do that at the times has been Jeff Loeb, and he kind of made a ground where he allowed, like these nice pictures. I don't think it worked as well with Liefeld, but with Tim Sale, it'd be these big pictures and it'd be like a couple of lines here and there. And I think it works sometimes, but it makes the book move really quickly. So I don't really want my books to go that quickly. I want, like, let it build, put all the stuff you need in there. There's some things, obviously, like I think that some points of some Neil Adams books or some Kirby books that were kind of overwritten, but sometimes the way Stan did it, I think you can get away with that, because it was like he was describing stuff that was happening in the page, and I'm like, this still works. The still works. So I'm all for, if you're gonna do this, you got the fans coming to see it, why not make it better? And why didn't if the Image guys had pulled along, we have to do another episode on it. If I know Peter David didn't really have a rapport with a lot of the artists that he worked with, to say they would call him back to say, hey, you want to work on this book with me, type of deal. But if they would have pulled saying, hey, we need someone to kind of flesh out these ideas, and we'll work out a 75 me, 25 you, or maybe 80-20, like you get a portion of it and this sort of thing, which they were not interested at all. They were totally like, we got to do what Byrne and these guys are doing. They're kicking the writer out because the writer's making some money for doing nothing. Not that these guys just wanted to write, and they had some trepidation about it first. They're like, am I gonna fall on my face? And you hear that with not just Byrne, but you hear that with Simonson too. And Simonson was a big sci-fi guy, but he was like with Archie Goodwin. Archie Goodwin was a collaborator, was saying, hey, why don't you let Walt do Battlestar Galactica? I think he can handle it. And then he started writing, and then that's how ultimately, when they were like, hey, Thor, we're going to cancel Thor so you can do whatever you want. Here's a list of stuff you can do, but ultimately, whatever you want to do is fine. So, I mean, you can hear Perez too talks about Karen Berger being a great editor and not dealing with the name of Perez and being like, oh, this is all kind of, you're too much dialogue, too much here, and being critical and getting them, or even to the extent where Byrne joked about it, because fans looked at Byrne stuff and they're like, they just let him do whatever he wants. And Jim Salicrup was like, I canceled 2 and 3 stories in the office, and Byrne is like, oh yeah, my well-trained editor, Jim Salicrup. He's like, Byrne, why would you say this? Like, hey, like they keep acting like I don't, I got carte blanche here now, and you're rejecting my stories here and there, that sort of thing. So ultimately, I'm cool with this. This I've only seen the picture of the of the Gooding here. So let's see what I think Young Ripper has something to say after this. So we're gonna play that and then we'll get out of here.
It is now official. Mike Barron has officially joined the Rippaverse. You guys remember that stream that we did not too long ago with Mike, and he just flat out admitted it and flat out just said, hey, he wanted to join the Rippaverse. And we had some discussions. We wanted to give him something that made sense, and we collaborated, and we put our heads together, and with the introduction of Gooding and Isom to it, seemed like a hand in glove fit for the character. So coming very soon, let's just say next year sometime, you will be getting a Gooding book. Oddly enough, he was received very well. It's not to say that I didn't think that he would be received poorly. It was just we didn't really highlight Gooding. He was on the title, yeah, but you didn't see anything until you bought the book. And he was very vital to the storyline in Isom too. Nonetheless, I've already read the script. It's amazing. This book, it gives more context to the character. So Gooding, the Polymath, it will be out in 2024. I'm getting my years all messed up. 2024, and I can't wait for you all to get a hold of it. Right.
Okay. We're almost out of here with this.
Now over at Rippaverse.com, you can pre-order the.
No more talking about the merch. So yeah, I'm not sure how many books he's got. But I was a big fan of Mike Barron. I was reading his Punisher, and then at the same time the Flash happened, and then I found what's that thing? I found Nexus years after when it went to Dark Horse, and I was reading those, and I like those. So I think he's a pretty solid writer. Funny guy if you listen to his videos. And I seen him at a con where I bought a Badger outfit, a Badger comic book. Any other words before we close this one out?
No, I don't think I'm going to be reading this, but if you do, hey, let me know. Let me know how it goes, and if it's something I should tap into, I'll definitely take your recommendation.
All right, cool. All right, so check it out. It'd probably be a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, something or another. And let us know if you see it before us. Spin a rack.
Out.
Out.